let's talk about a brain map. Let's talk about the process. Let's talk about how it is amazing and why it is a solution and a pathfinder that you're just not learning about. Let me start with what it is and why it doesn't get used enough. So a brain map is a really sort of easy process where you're putting a cap on and it's measuring the surface electrical activity of the brain. Okay, fancy words. Basically, because we're seeing the electrical activity of the brain, it actually can show us what's happening over the structures, whether a brain is working too much, it's overworking, it's too excited, or it's not working, it's slow, it's sluggish, right? It's nothing to do with intellect. It's actually how the specific areas are performing. That's one way we can see the brain. And we're going to tie this to behavior and why this is an important path if you're really trying to figure out what the heck is going on with your kid. And the second thing it does is it actually looks at the brain communication patterns, which for most of you, unless you're working with me, you probably haven't heard of that before. Brain communication patterns we're learning through research, particularly in the neurodivergent brain. So kids with learning disabilities, ADHD, autism are actually even more important in terms of, your kid's daily life, symptoms you do and don't see. Brain communication is even more important than actually what's happening in the structures, right? Because we always think like most of you have heard of, oh, the limbic system, your emotional center, but you're not really hearing about how does that information get from one area to another and why is that so important? Brain maps are just not commonly done, right? This is the brain. There's not as many people as nerdy as Dr. Rowe, and I've been working with wired uniquely kids for 33 years. Once I got my doctorate, I started doing neuropsych testing. So I was doing a lot with the brain and really trying to make sense through data analysis, which is what a brain map does, right? And helping parents to connect what was happening on those individual tests and how could we use their strengths to really improve the weaknesses, right? And just to know, I say this a lot. I'm math disabled, so technically I'm neurodivergent. I'm a mom of neurodivergent kids. Every brain is unique and there is nothing wrong with wanting to optimize our brains. This is not to say you're not going to be ADHD or autistic, even though I work with kids where they lose their diagnoses. There's a variety of reasons. We don't need to get to that. But what a brain map does with me is it really gets down to what is going on. This is my diagnostic tool. And I mentioned earlier that many people bring brain maps from other people and they do a consult with me, right? So they'll do a virtual consult where I analyze somebody else's brain maps, and that's okay. And I do that. Then I make a care plan, right? But it doesn't replace coming in and getting a brain map with me. Most people get a brain map, they fly in or drive in or whatever it is, they get a brain map, they get to hang out with me. And I spend a very long time with people connecting the brain to the behavior. Because what is unique about me, right? You have chiropractors and MDs, you have all kinds of people. Don't go to anybody who's not licensed. That is some hokey business and they don't have any skill set. Don't do that. A brain map and actually collecting the data, we're going to go into what that looks like, isn't terribly, terribly hard. It is the interpretation. And so, what I do that is very different, and why so many people bring their kids to me after having worked with another provider, is I can connect to what is actually happening in the brain, right? So, your frontal lobes are slow. I think most of you could probably guess that's somebody who's going to have a hard time with focus. Maybe your limbic system is overactive. You're going to be reactive, right? But what makes a brain pattern look like an autistic brain pattern? What makes a brain pattern look like somebody who has PANS or Lyme disease impacting or seizures or you name it? Don't think I didn't name it that I haven't seen it because I've done over 10,000 of these. I stopped counting at 10,000 in a matter of under a minute. I can really assess the patterning because a brain map gives us that visual representation again of what's overworking and underworking. Super simple. So then when you understand what the brain does and does and doesn't do, you really can say, well, okay, so you're sluggish in your frontal lobes. Oh, do they have auditory processing? Because that area is weak. And, parents look at me like I literally have had like a dozen parents tell me that I've implanted listening devices in their house before this meeting, like jokingly, but not. And that's because we remove all guesswork. Why is it that this isn't the standard of care? Well, one, brain maps are not covered by insurance. They're just not commonly done. Two, it requires a lot of darn training. I've trained a lot of physicians, and they told me that learning these things, including neurofeedback, was harder than anything they've done in medical school. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying many doctors have told me that, which is reassuring because it's very, very hard to do neurofeedback. This is not EEG neurofeedback is not these plug-in, play systems like InfraSlow and whatnot. You got to know what you're doing. So a brain map requires a lot of clinical experience. So people will say to me, "Oh, where can I find a provider?" Do not ask me. Do not contact me because I don't have a name for you. I am the only person doing what I'm doing. I have a trademark program. Sometimes people come to me for a consult and go back to their provider, and that's okay. I don't work with other providers. And if you want to work with me, you can go to drroseann.com/help. And it's a solution matcher that's going to guide you in the right direction. But again, at a basic level, a brain map is really going to tell us what is going on in this brain. Is this ADHD? Is this a learning disability? I'm telling you right now, if you've heard me talk, 50% of the time or more, when somebody comes in and tells me their kid has ADHD or themselves, I do work with adults. And just know, I say this everywhere, I'll work with any kind of case. I don't care how hard it is, but I don't work with rude or disrespectful or demanding people. If you identify with that, please leave because you're not going to be able to work with me. I'm not going to work with you. We only work with parents who, like this morning, one of my all-time favorite moms, you know who you are, who, like we shed a tear together. It's hard. This is hard work. I don't care how hard that case is. I don't care how many times you've been rejected, because the reality is you're here because you're not sure what your kid has. Maybe one day you're like, oh, are they bipolar? Oh, maybe they have ADHD. Oh, maybe they have PANS. That is the majority of people. And the majority of people, their road to get to me is long. Like 80% of the time, you've tried a lot, you've done a lot. And here's the thing, if you're operating under the wrong idea of what it is, how are you going to get to the right treatment? You're not. And that is what I'm a master at, is really strategizing. I'm actually in shock how hard it is for people to just decide to do this. And please know, I'm really not doing this forever and really not that much longer. You all know I have a big book coming out in September of 2026. What is a brain map? What is it analyzing? What are these things? When there are certain patterns we know are consistent with certain clinical conditions, and some of those patterns like ADHD, widely accepted, anxiety, widely accepted, genetic OCD, widely accepted, but OCD from PANS, not. Understanding the complexity because of environmental causes or even genetic variants, that's just not common. I'm able to see issues with your gut. I'm able to see problems with absorbing protein. That is only from lots of clinical experience, not just clinical experience in interpreting those brain maps, but what I bring to the table, right? Because I've spent 3 decades, and every day I spend time training and learning. I already looked at the research alerts today. I always use the story because this is true. Last year, I was told that I had to replace all the air conditioning systems in my house. I have 3 of them. I don't even know how much it was going to be. It was because they also then said that were some of the heating systems. It was going to be at least $50,000. It's probably going to be like $75,000, to be honest. So it didn't make sense. Like, yeah, my house is 21 years old, but doesn't mean anything because it's a high level product. So I search and search and search. And I found like this expert, and he came in and he was like, "Can you explain to me what they said?" And I'm not joking. I needed a $200 repair. That's what expert care gets you, because you're able to use your experience to help people have better outcomes. When we are analyzing these patterns, right, not every Joe Schmo is able to say, this is the pattern, and then this is what you do about it, right? Worked in schools. I've worked with thousands of kids with very complex issues and learning all kinds of things. So that's what that care plan plus, I've been integrative since 1992. So I help people. Our program is a multi-pronged approach. This is not just neurofeedback. This is a concierge level of mental health. You are appointed a case manager. We have our own admin, and I only work with 5 or 6 people a month. That is it. Like I recently had somebody and, they had the laundry list of diagnoses, ADHD, mood disorder, OCD, a learning disability, sensory processing, and we're wondering if it were autism. We looked at the brain. I started asking questions, right? Because I have the clinical experience to say, okay, this is not it. This is what it is. And so I had to get, through the big A, autism. Like, talk to me. What is this about? What is, this, that. And we were able to really pin down what the issues were. And there were multiple issues, but we looked at what was the patterning of the brain. Was it consistent? But more importantly, what were the clinical issues? What's the daily life? And there was a surprise. There was a traumatic event. That traumatic event really triggered the majority of issues, right? Everybody knew, all the other providers knew, but nobody called it trauma. The mother kept saying it was trauma. So, yes, there was a history, but the trauma was the fuel. Just like my pants people, like sometimes there's something there, and then the infections and toxins just throw it in the other way. So, the kind of care that this mother was like, I don't even know where I found you. I found you in an internet search. And that's where a lot of people do. And this is just, bologna and cheese that we don't have more strategy in how we're approaching things. But she had tried a lot, like a lot more, traditional, homeopathic, integrative, you name it. There were only a few things. I was like, wow, you really have tried a lot. That's pretty typical. So my plan is now different because they didn't have the clinical experience to really connect the dots, right? So the brain map is a piece of data that really helps us to have clarity on exactly what's working, what's not, right? It also gives us a lot of clues, right? If you've ever heard me speak before, can't even tell you how many times I see birth trauma. I see head injury, adults and kids. I have somebody who has in and out of psychiatric hospitals right now. I said 100% there's a head injury here. They were like, no. Then they remembered something that happened on a vacation, a head injury at age 2 that resulted in having to go to the hospital, right? And somehow that just, nobody ever connected that. Their other providers knew about it. Like, it wasn't like they didn't know about it. They never said that is a major issue, right? That brain map made it really clear that that actually was the issue. And this was a family that thought their kid had PANS. I didn't see evidence of that, right? Now, we have lab work and we work as a provider, but those infections and toxins are no longer active, but yet everything else is still there and actually worse. So we have to go back and we have to use that brain map to alter what our care plan is. And that's awesome. Just to understand, a brain map does not replace a school evaluation, like the neuropsych testing I used to do. I can see lines of communication that are consistent with learning disabilities. This happens, again, my ADHD people, like constantly. Like, I'm like, everybody else in the family's dyslexic, but somehow you thought this one wasn't, and they're like, well, they can read. And I'm like, well, dyslexics can read, but they can't read well, most. It doesn't replace that individual test for autism. That same mom where we were talking about autism, I was like, gold standard is a test called the ADOS. I said, has an ADOS been administered? And they said, yes. So I was like, okay. So, and you felt that it was a qualified provider, because that's another thing. Yeah, yes, I did. And we went over it and stuff like that. This is not that. Somebody recently came to me and was like, I want a brain map so that we can challenge the diagnosis the school gave. And I was like, listen, you need individually administered testing. This is an IEP process. If you want me to do this for your own knowledge, so that's what you should do. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. It seems silly because you're in conflict and you're unsure if their idea of what your kid has is really it. But I can write a great letter, But this does not replace that. That is to help you understand the learning profile. So let me be clear about that. I don't do testing anymore. This is pretty common, right? That people say to me, nothing worked until we did a brain map. And it is just one of my greatest favorite things to do for people because it takes the mess and it makes sense. For me, everybody knows me knows I say I'm Neo in the Matrix, and that brain map takes all this confusion and gives us the clear line. And then I come in with questioning. That diagnostic. This is why, and I hope you're getting a clear picture of why I don't refer to other people. I don't know anybody doing my work. I'm not saying people are bad. Please know I'm not disrespecting anybody. I can only guarantee what I'm doing. And I know that what I come with is 33 years of experience and an integrative mind. So when you ask people, right, and you think, well, they're a neurofeedback provider, they're integrative, not always the case. This might be the only thing that they do. They might know nothing about supplements or nutrition. And in fact, many don't. Hopefully they'll learn, right? But what we do know, and I can tell you this very clearly in terms of treatment in our brain behavior reset program, it doesn't matter if it's PANS, it doesn't matter if it's OCD, it doesn't matter if it's depression, failure to launch, it doesn't matter what it is. You must take a multi-pronged approach. Here comes hold on, my magic wand. This is not a magic wand. Now, a brain map is really a clear path. Most people who work with me will get a brain map. Sometimes it's a consult and I'm looking at somebody else's. And like I said, I do that. And on occasion, I have kids who are so dysregulated that they can't come to me. And sometimes we start with our COM PMF, which I have right here. Sometimes we start with neurofeedback. It depends. I don't have, my care plans are customized and strategically designed. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, laid it out because we had to have a tactical plan. I don't know what the hell is wrong with my field or even medicine. It is spaghetti on the wall and we are all suffering. I had a conversation with one of my moms today because they needed a OCD ERP provider in their state. I gave her a vetted list from iocdf.org, which means you have to submit your information and be vetted. And she was like, Roseann, God help me. These are some bad providers. And I was like, girl, you have no idea. So I said, do you see why I gave you you could have done coaching with our amazing provider, Michelle Bernal. Go listen to that episode if you haven't. I said, it's hard. She goes, I talked to every single person in 200 miles from my house. She lives in a big state. And I found one that you gave me the criteria and I made her listen to the episodes and she was like, and I think she's good. And I was like, she's good because you now know. But this is what happens. And that's not to say like, please understand, I don't think everybody's bad. I'm not being negative, but it takes a lot of experience. It takes a lot of experience. It takes a lot of clinical know-how to get people moving. And it takes a curious provider. You must have a curious provider who's going to guide you in the direction that is going to help your child's nervous system regulate, your family move from co-dysregulation to co-regulation. And the science shows us that if you are not regulating, you are wasting your flipping time. Stop trying to go to talk therapy, stop trying to go to OT, PT, the math tutor. You got to regulate first. That is why we get the results that we get. I know you've tried a lot. Know that I'm a PANS mom. I'm a mom of a triple deficit, dyslexic, fully remediated, graduating 8th grade soon. I know people will say, well, I've tried this and I've done this and the meds have to work. No, you just haven't gotten to the right place. And I can promise you that a brain map will give you an unbelievable amount of clarity. I wish it was the standard of care. Everybody who comes to me and gets a brain map says, why didn't I do this sooner? I don't know. I'm telling you to do this. Like, it doesn't matter if it's the brain map, it's talk therapy, it's your Orton Gillingham tutor. You must have people that are aligned with you, right? And your philosophies. Know that I don't believe that medication should ever be the first line of defense. I will never shame you for it, but I will show you another path to make the brain work. And it's going to be a science-backed path. It's going to be a path that has the clinical evidence from research studies, not my own. In my program, I have everybody do epigenetic testing. We use data to make sense out of things and guide you in that right direction. And that's why people get better. I'm imploring people, because this is a time of uncertainty in the world, right? Regardless of your political affiliations, people are feeling very uncertain. Instead of being stuck, like, I don't know what to do, I think they're ADD, his cousin's ADD, just get a brain map, come to me, get it done, and maybe that's your only stopping point, and move on. As I'm ending my career soon of actually doing clinical work, because I just wish everybody would do this. It is an unbelievable tool, and anybody who's ever had one will attest to what it is. And it's just so different, right? And just know that even for ADHD, okay, the research shows us that a QEEG is 89% accurate in diagnostic, and that those little forms that you fill out with your pediatrician. I love to read Facebook group threads like, oh, go to your pediatrician to get a diagnosis. Like, that is not what they're trained to do. Those little forms you fill out, the behavioral rating scales, are anywhere from, I think it's 32 to 45% effective. Pretty uncertain, right? So many things can look like ADHD, depression, anxiety, a learning disability. Why guess? Get this done and move on. What is the process? You're putting a cap on. They have a gel that is cool to the touch, and that is what helps to connect the electrical. It's conductivity gel, and it helps to get the electrical activity read. It's benign. It's an easy process. We have lots of kids and adults with sensory issues, autism, difficulties in sitting still. We are experts on uniqueness. So people get a brain map, or they do a diagnostic where it's done, and they might meet with me virtually or in person. And then I spend a really long time with people, really helping them to understand it and what needs to happen. And I write a care plan. And that becomes the foundation of working with me. Our program is 6 months. That's what we do. Once you understand the brain and really understand what it needs, it just takes all of this, this overwhelm and anxiety and stress that will just continue. People, all those fears and worries that you have that your kid's going to live in your basement and not go to college and all those other things, I don't want those to be true, because they don't have to be. But we need to do a better job of understanding what is happening with kids, and that's what a brain map does. It takes that guessing away. And just know that this is one part that really can clear the path to helping your kid be calm in a chaotic world and to be happy. And as a mom of Wired Differently kids, this is what we want. And it cuts through the 2 a.m. internet searches, right? My mom, I was on just before, she said, until I started working with you, I literally was up every night till 2 a.m. trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with my kid. And she was like, we turned it around within weeks. And that, it took her, I don't know how many years to find me, and she found my podcast. So let's work on regulating our nervous system. And if you're unsure and you've tried a lot of things, please do not give up. This is your next path, because at least it can tell you what your next step is. Maybe it is neurofeedback. Maybe it's dietary change. Maybe it's something totally different. I tell people exactly what it is. It's not always my program, and that's okay, because you need a provider who's going to guide you to the right way. And take our solution matcher. And we have lots of things for people, including very low cost things, but you get to get on and you get to get free information. And we have a newsletter coming back very soon. So sending everybody a lot of love, and from one parent to another, it doesn't have to be this hard, and you can figure it out, and a brain map is your next step.